Have you ever noticed that the way you speak to yourself about your weight is harsher than anything you'd ever say to someone else? For many of us, the weight struggle becomes a toxic relationship, not with food, but with ourselves. The inner critic, the shame spirals, the constant not enough, it wears us down. In today's episode, we're shining a light on this pattern of self-abuse, how it starts, why it sticks, and most importantly, how to begin shifting into a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself. It's time to stop being your own worst enemy and start becoming your most powerful ally. So take a deep breath and come on in. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind. Hi there, I'm Rita Black. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, weight loss expert, best-selling author, and the creator of the Shift Weight Mastery process. And not only have I helped thousands of people over the past 20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking podcast, where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life. Sound good? Let's get started. Hello. Welcome and come on in. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Just thank you. I'm feeling very grateful today. I am. And I'm grateful for you. Really, I truly am. I think about our community all the time. And I really appreciate your showing up here every week. You know, I hear from various people how they listen to our show, on their walks or at the gym or when they're driving in their car. And I just love that we have this ongoing conversation every week. And if you are new to the Thin Thinking podcast, welcome. Welcome. Come on in. You are so welcome to be here. And I hope you find this to be a home that you can come to every week just to reinforce a powerful mindset in the world of weight management, self-care, and basically showing up for yourself. So I have been, it's been a working summer this summer. Sometimes, and in a good way. I love to work. I love to work. My husband jokes because, he's retired now and he has many hobbies. Well, I laugh at how many hobbies my husband has. I know many of you love what you do too and cannot think about not working, and some of you can't wait to be done with official work so that you can dig into your life and the things that you're really inspired about and travel or your grants or your kids or what have you. But I am amazed at my husband's ability to just dig into things that are just non-work oriented. Right now I'm trying to focus his energy on practical things like fixing the generator that is sitting out in our backyard that isn't working. And we have this little fountain in our backyard too. It's like a teeny tiny Moroccan fountain. It's very pretty, but it's tiny. But the motor doesn't work anymore. And I was like, honey, now that, I have his honey-do list. And he's going down that very slowly, I have to say. But anyway, I've been working steadily on an upcoming one-day online BingeFREE retreat that I am hosting this coming Saturday, July 19th, 2025. And in working on everything, this retreat, which I am really looking forward to, I've been thinking about the self-abuse that goes along with the binge cycle. And we will be working on this in the retreat. But we've also just been talking about these limiting beliefs and vicious ways of communicating with ourselves in my membership. And so it's just been kind of in the zeitgeist, just the whole self-doubt, self-abuse that can persist even when we're doing well. I mean, I must be frank and say it's not just when we're, getting off track, but also when we're doing well. The doubt in ourselves, the disbelief that the doing well is going to continue. So I wanted to bring back an episode that I recorded a little while ago, and well over a year ago. But it's a good episode on breaking self-abuse and 7 steps to break this weight self-abuse. And since we are going to in the zone, so to speak, and I'll just say something, before we get into it. The summer is an interesting time, I find. I talk about it every summer because every summer this lack of structure, the way that we are way more social during the summer months or the warmer months, I will say, because my friends in Australia and down under, they're, I guess their summer months are warm too. They qualify December though as summer. So it's a crazy upside down universe, when we're flipping over northern and southern hemispheres. But anyway, in the warmer months, when culturally we kind of let go a little bit, things aren't as structured, we are traveling, we are going out and being with friends, I just see the self-abuse kicking up because we're out of that structure. That kind of reminds us that we're on track and doing well. And just having that lack of structure seems to kick up this kind of fuzzy self-abuse because things feel a little more chaotic because we don't have that sort of mental and external structure that we kind of do the rest of the year. I just find that very interesting. And so I thought that was another reason why I wanted to bring this episode in today. And if you want to, please join us this weekend, this Saturday. Oh my gosh, it is going to be, I'm really thrilled about this. It's, like I said, a one-day online retreat from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. That you can we're going to really do a deep dive, or it's going to be a number of hypnosis sessions and closed-eyed meditations processing. We're going to have Rocio, my community manager, leading us through a tapping episode, and there'll be a lot of coaching and being able to get into groups with people. So it's going to be a great time. And if you cannot make it but are still interested, I've priced it. You can still get in. I'm keeping it at a very reasonable rate, just to so that people can afford to come. And even if you can't come, it's affordable to enroll because the recording, we're going to make it into a program. And then you'll also have that lifetime access to the program, and the rate that we're going to be letting people enroll in it after is going to go up. So it's still, probably the most affordable it will be. So if you are interested at all, you can save $100, and that's more than half the price of the day. go to www.shiftweightmastery.com/binge-free. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com/binge-free to reserve your spot, or you can just find the link in the show notes. And now let's look at self-abuse around weight and dive in. I think sometimes when we've struggled with weight, we can become scarred emotionally from abuse from others. Definitely, I can remember one time my brother had this wonderful saying. He always was poking fun at my weight, but I remember specifically one rainy Seattle afternoon when we were so bored because we didn't have things like games, video games, and phones or distractions. So we had to kind of create our own fun. And so we had this cassette recorder, and my brother, my sister, and I would do funny little weird skits and record them like a radio station. And my brother, who was the DJ, called it KFAT, KFAT from Seattle, and he said that I was the station's owner. So definitely people poking fun at me from within my home, but I also, and something that I think you guys can all relate to if you had mothers who were critical of your weight. My mother was overweight, but she could look at me just in a particular way, or look at my thighs, or touch me in a particular way and kind of roll her eyes or make a look without being too verbally abusive, but letting me know that, I think at one point she said, your thighs are as wide as mine, and I know many of you probably had parents who were critical of your weight. I certainly know this from seeing so many clients and hearing horrible stories of criticism from our parents. So, having to put all these feelings and emotions in a place, especially as an adolescent, when you don't really have the skills, the coping skills and the emotional maturity that you have as an adult. It's hard enough as an adult, but it's, much more imprinting when our brains are young and vulnerable. Our subconscious mind is open wide to, latch on to limiting beliefs and ideas about ourselves. I remember one time, I'll just tell you this last time because you might get a little kick out of it. I mean, it's horrific, but at the same time, I have to laugh. I really, really, really loved to dance, and I took dance lessons despite being the biggest girl in the room. And my mom was smart and enrolled me in modern dance, which was, at the time, I wasn't going to be a Twiggy ballerina, but modern dance was, you could have a little more muscle and a little more heft, and it was more acceptable, I guess. So I did modern dance for a while, and then I wanted to be in our high school musicals, and I actually was in every single musical, and I always wanted to play a leading role. And my voice was okay, like my singing voice was okay, but I really liked dance, and I actually, got cast as the dancer. I was always put in the back of the chorus, in the very behind, because I was also tall. But we did West Side Story. I really, really, really wanted to be Anita, but of course the role went to, that's Maria's sister, if you know West Side Story. But anyway, she gets to sing I'd Like to Be in America, and she's a sassy woman. And, I thought I did a really good acting audition, but anyway, I didn't get the role. I got the role of a dancer. And I remember us, and this was so humiliating, but we all had to dance. We had to learn dance, a very specific type of dance that was kind of like a swing dance where the guys would like lift the girls up over their head and do all these kind of fancy things. We took our musicals very, very seriously at our high school. We were known for putting on good shows. And we had a very serious choreographer. And I remember they paired me up with this skinny little guy who was probably half my height. And I towered over him, and I was twice as wide as he was. And I just remember they were like, okay, guys, grab the girl by the waist and lift her up over your head. And he couldn't do it. And, it was embarrassing enough that he couldn't do it, but then he had to make a big whole scene about like how fat I was and how he couldn't lift me up over his head. So, that's my recollection of West Side Story. But, again, we all have our stories. In fact, they had a nickname for me, which was Dancing Bear. Everybody called me that. I was the Dancing Bear because I was a dancer, but I was kind of also a teddy bear, according to all my friends. And they didn't mean it in a cruel way, but of course, my wounds run deep. So when I go back to Seattle, not anymore, but in the first years of going back to Seattle after I left, I always kind of wanted to show them. I always wanted to show them, I'll show you, I'll be thin, I'll be successful. You'll see that you were wrong to be mean to me. And I think anybody who struggled with their weight has that fantasy, or has nursed that fantasy at some point in their life. And I remember going back to my 10th and my 10th reunion. I was living in London at the time, and I don't think I could afford to come back. But I went back to my 20th reunion, and I remember I was so steeled, because it was right around the time that it wasn't right around the time I lost weight. I'd kept my weight off for about 5 years at the point. I'm trying to remember my timeline, but I definitely wasn't worried about my weight. I was at my ideal weight. And I remember walking into this event. I believe it was, we do this big event, but we do event the night before, and everybody's like, wow, Rita, you've been away for so long and we haven't seen you. And oh my gosh, you look amazing. And people were so kind, and it was so lovely to see everybody. But I really remember this feeling of almost like fighting ghosts, if you know what I mean. Like, I feel like there was so much anxiety and pressure within me to prove myself. And as I got into conversations with people, especially the people who I had equated with my weight struggle, people who had called me Dancing Bear, who people maybe had poked fun at me, or guys who had done the old, I'm dating your best friend and now I'm going to date you so that your best friend will be jealous. They were the loveliest people in the world. We had such nice conversations, and it was so weird because I left that event and I still felt like I was fighting something. I mean, it was like I had buried some ghosts definitely in that room. I left some pain behind me, seeing that I was an equal, that I was, a human being along with all these other human beings. And of course, it was lovely to see people from my past. I was very fortunate to go to a great high school full of beautiful, warm people, truly. But I realized as I left there, those ghosts weren't in that room as much as they were inside me. And I realized that so much of the pain that I went through during high school, maybe it started outside of me, but it definitely had gotten pulled inside of me. And it was now like these ghosts were the ghosts of my own creation, that telling me I wasn't enough, telling me I was never going to measure up, that still feeling lesser than all those people in the room, even though I could rationally say I measure up or had been successful to a certain degree, just as far as successful in life. I had a beautiful husband. I had a beautiful child. I had, I was starting to do the work that I'm doing here with you. I was in a good place. There was so much good going on in my life. And yet there was a part of me that just felt like I was up against something, and that there was this big void, and I just couldn't place it. And I really thought about it a lot, and I really started to see how much of that ghost was this really harsh, inner critic that we always talk about, that self-abusive relationship. It's almost a trauma, like almost a PTSD that I had from that time in my life, that was just not only external circumstances, but really this internal life where I was so vicious with myself. And then that carried on through my 20s and into my early 30s before I began my own shift. Yeah, so when we struggle with weight, we abuse ourselves, and we keep ourselves from really knowing that we are not enough. I mean, keeping ourselves from really knowing that we are enough right now. For those of you who've worked for me, I have a saying, which is love yourself down the scale. And why is that so important? Well, I see so many people struggling with their weight, and we really become very vulnerable when we want to lose the weight in order to love ourselves. It puts us in a vulnerable position to want to lose weight as quickly as possible. So we glom on to these horrible diets or unsustainable diets just in the name of, well, I'll love myself when I get these 10 pounds off and I can't feel these rolls of fat, or 20 pounds off or 30 pounds off. And then maybe then I will be good enough and be fit enough and be okay enough to love myself. But we all know really deep down that the work we need to do with loving ourselves begins now. How many people I've seen release 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, get to their ideal weight. And because they weren't doing this work of really being with themselves and communicating with themselves in a more powerful way, then they get to their ideal weight and it's not enough. And they either feel disappointed, like, oh, I was supposed to turn into a butterfly. And then they just start gaining weight, or they try to lose more weight because they feel like, well, I'm not thin enough. And if I lose more weight, then I'll absolutely, then I'll be able to love myself 5 pounds less, right? I also think that there's that inner critic part of us that really believes that if our inner critic let up on us, didn't abuse us, didn't tell us we were lazy, didn't tell us you better lose some of this weight, or, stop eating that sugar, part, I believe, really thinks that if we let up on ourselves, that we would just go off on an eating rampage, that we would be uncontrollable. I really believe our inner critic, this part of us that is so vicious, so controlling, that really makes us feel like we aren't enough, is really acting vicious, not out of the joy and pleasure of being vicious, but really out of a deep fear. A deep fear that somehow, because we don't measure up, because we are this uncontrollable beast, that is not only not okay, but that we will absolutely be shunned from the cave, in our caveman primitive mind, that we will be excommunicated, or sent off to be outside the village because we are not enough and we are not okay. And if anybody really knew how not okay we were, that would just be unforgivable, and we would definitely be taken outside the village. I forget what the word for that is right now, but I'm going to love myself enough to be okay with the fact that that word is escaping my tip of my tongue. I'll come up with it in a moment, but it is that word for taking somebody outside and shipping them away. I know you know it, so I'm not going to worry about it. So when we struggle with our weight, we develop this inner critic, like I said, very vicious, more vicious than we would be with any other person, or dare be with any other person in our life, even our worst enemy. We criticize our behavior, we criticize our body, we criticize our lives and how we live it. I've been doing a lot of work this month, not this month, but last month, in the month of August, with my monthly mastery group. It was basically, the theme of the month was love yourself down the scale. So we did a lot of work on loving our bodies and loving ourselves. And what really was very surprising is I work with such an amazing group of people and very generous with each other in the group. But what they say coming out of their mouths about how they feel about themselves, they're all working on themselves beautifully. But how we feel about our bodies, how we feel about our body parts. We really looked at our body parts. It was just unbelievable how negative and down on ourselves that we can be. It's resonating so strongly with me. One, because of the reunion, but two, because of coming out of this month. So we did a body love challenge, and it was really interesting because we all had to work on different parts of our bodies. I chose my neck crepe because I'm getting crepey neck. skin, and other people chose. I didn't even know the things called arm wings. I know what these things look like under your arms, but I didn't know they were called wings. I thought that was really kind of interesting. Some people chose their belly, some people chose their butts, but we had to really embrace that body part. And I'm going to get into a little exercise that you can use too that will really shift your relationship with any particular body part that you struggle with. But yeah, our critic really goes at it relentlessly, and just at it over and over and over again, and that it becomes a negative pattern thought loop and self-criticism loop. And again, it feels like we are trapped in this room with this very, very vicious and critical person, very abusive. How did we get so critical? So we are born into a world of very high expectations of who you need to be in order to be loved, don't we? We have our family's expectations. A lot of families have expectations of what we should look like, what we should act like, what we should, how smart we should be, how productive we should be. We have our parents' fears. I mentioned some of my mother's fears. I think, because she was obese, she didn't want me to be obese, and again, it came from a place of absolute love, but her fear manifested itself in ways that made me feel smaller and not enough. I can't blame her, but I can just see how many people are impacted from their parents' opinions. And, then the media, right? I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, which were really skinny decades. The aesthetic was really thin, and you could never be too thin, right? Never too thin, never too rich. That was the saying. I think the aesthetic has changed, but we compare ourselves still. I can't tell you how many clients I've had who look back at pictures of themselves when they were a girl, maybe in the 70s and the 60s, and they see themselves and they say to me, I can't believe how beautiful I was, but I thought I was a fat pig. And I look back and I see I wasn't fat at all. Maybe I wasn't super skinny like my friends, but there was nothing that was fat or chunky, but I felt like an elephant in the room. And I can relate because I felt absolutely the same. And at the time, we were steeped in this media culture of ultra thin women, the fashion world, the clothes don't fit, or they make us look and feel dumpy, especially now that they have some fashions that actually are embracing, or the fashion world is embracing bigger sizes and curvy women, which is amazing. But, a lot of us didn't grow up in that time. We grew up in the world of Lane Bryant, of the world of, having to not even shop in a normal store and having to go to big plus size stores, and that shame and humiliation. I remember looking for dresses for dances, and I couldn't fit into any of the teenage girl clothes that my friends were looking at. I had to go into the women's section where things were a lot more dumpy, especially in the 70s and the 80s. Well, it was the 70s. Yeah. The 80s was college, and that was hard enough. But yeah, the 70s was tough. So we really develop it, and then we have jobs, we have friends. So, we get this limiting belief view from many, many places, and then we develop this very critical lens through which we see ourselves, and it's really driven by this fear that we are not enough, this fear that are going to be ostracized from our lives, our communities, our friends, if we're going to be rejected. And so this part of us develops in a way to protect us, to make us live up to these standards and to conform and be good. But these high expectations and these false standards create this very abusive relationship that we have with ourselves. And it's almost like there's a part of us that shuts down after a while. We have this big evidence folder of things that we do wrong. I do this exercise with clients, sometimes I say to them, what's in that evidence folder that you're not enough? And they'll start to list all these things. And I'll say, okay, well, let's look at that other evidence folder of you are enough. And they're like, I can't really think of anything. But yes, in that evidence folder is you're a failure. And we bring that with us every time to every situation we go into, every diet we go on. We go into our weight loss attempts with, I'm not good enough, I can't be controlled, I can't be restricted. So because we believe that on a subconscious level, any attempt at really releasing weight or getting healthier, a lot of times is disintegrated because we have this deep underlying belief. And so we give up on ourselves really easily, hoping we'll be perfect one day. I think that's the illusion of the critic, is that I'm going to work harder at making you conform. I'm going to make you work harder at the gym. I'm going to make you eat less food, no sugar for you, no white foods for you, no nothing for you, no food for you, water only, horrible drinks, horrible boxed food. You must conform and you must lose weight and you must be loved this way. It's a cruel, cruel voice, and it's a repeated cognitive loop over and over and over again. Not very creative, the way we talk to ourselves in this way. And we put ourselves in clothes that cut off our circulation. We put ourselves in these tight, I remember my mother, oh my gosh. Now we have Spanx, which I think are a little kinder, but they're still really tight. Or we wear these tight pants and the tight waistband cuts into us. I remember cutting off my circulation, almost wearing pants. I fit into these jeans, lying on the back of bed, so that my stomach wasn't as big, and zipping them up and then standing up and then spending the whole night in discomfort. But my mom had these girdles, man. These were, 1960s girdles that she just would heave herself into, and it was so uncomfortable for her to be in. I remember her taking them off and having these deep welts in her skin. And I know she hated herself so much for it. She would just yell at herself in the kitchen. So how do we begin to break this? How do we start to separate ourselves out from this voice? Because the problem is that we believe this voice, right? This voice isn't, oh, I'm listening to my inner critic. This voice is the water we swim in. This is our reality. This is what we hear, and the only thing we hear. So in a weird way, it's like we're in an abusive relationship, and we're stuck in this almost like an abusive relationship with a partner cycle. So the first step to separate ourselves out and start to get some power back from this is to get conscious. Be conscious about how you abuse yourself. The good news is that the way you abuse yourself isn't incredibly creative. Like I said, it's kind of boring. You abuse yourself kind of in laughable, the same ways you always abuse yourself. When I started to get conscious to the way I abused myself, I was shocked at how, I would just say the same thing over and over again. And I started to laugh at it. I was kind of like, that's all you got? It's mean. It's really mean, but it's not very creative. Oh, you're fat. You're lazy. You're never going to get this. You're never going to lose all the weight. You're eating that. You blew it. That's all you got? You're going to give it? But start to just observe it. The restrictions, the way you want to restrict yourself. No sugar for you. No coffee for you. You're going to pull it together on Monday. So 2, start to become aware of the relationship with yourself that you do want. What would that look like? When people are in abusive relationships, These are the first two steps. They say get conscious of how that other person is abusing you. And then they say start to create an idea of how you would like to be treated. What kind of relationship do you want to be in? Well, the same applies to us. What relationship do we want to be with ourselves? Now, I remember when I first started doing this work with myself, I remember I said, if I could change one thing, it would be the way I speak to myself when I first wake up in the morning. Because that was the worst time of day for me. Oh boy, I would wake up after, binging and just be like, oh, you did it last night. Why did you do it? You were doing good. And then you were just like, you went to town, you overate. And I could feel the food in my belly. I would just, you're never, ever going to work this out. That was my fear. It was just going to keep going for the rest of my life. And that voice, that negative loop would really make me feel like I had like ropes around me. I felt like such a prisoner of this situation. So for me, my vision was to wake up into loving thoughts of myself and loving thoughts of my life. So what I started to do was to be grateful in the morning. So that's what I did. I would write out a gratitude list and I would just have it by the bed. And I would just read it over when I woke up in the morning and started speaking to myself in a critical fashion. I would get out my gratitude list. I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for where I live. I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head. I am grateful that I have a body, that I'm alive. I'm grateful for my parents. I would just have a list of things that I was grateful for. And then I would write about things that I was going to be grateful for in the future. Like, I'm grateful that I stayed focused, that I moved my body lovingly every day. And those gratitudes, those future gratitudes really were helpful for me to start to get my mind wrapped around what I wanted to do in a really positive way. And interestingly enough, I was speaking about this with my group, and I'm starting to have them do it, is I just had them start writing out their gratitude list and then recording that. It's very helpful. It's a wonderful way, and this is what I do in the morning now, and I listen to it, and I always wake up into some positive vibes. I always wake up, I should say, it was self-hypnosis. It's, I record grateful for where I am and grateful for where I'm going. So that is something I really envisioned myself, and then I started to work through that for myself. You see what I'm saying? So where is it that what is that relationship with yourself? Now, I attacked one area, my worst area, and I started from there and I worked out into my life. But I want you to start to create a vision of the relationship with yourself that you want. We so know what we don't want, but we rarely think about what is it you want? What is the relationship with yourself that you want? Okay, and you can have that relationship now, by the way, not waiting until you're thin. I think that's the mistake most people make, is they think, oh, I'm going to wait until I'm thin, and then that relationship will just naturally come. Well, it ain't. It will not come naturally. You have to really create it in your mind, and then start to work towards it. Now, number 3, you want to make that decision to stop, to say, look, I am fed up. I am mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Those of you who remember that movie, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm not going to listen to this inner critic anymore. I'm going to leave this house of abuse. And I want you to recognize this is a recovery journey. It really is. And you need a new house to go to. You need a house of self-compassion. So, in the shift, one of the things that we do, and you can do this right now, is you can create what I call your shift space. And it's a place in your mind. And this is what I would call your house of self-compassion. You can imagine this is just a beautiful place of your own design and choosing. Maybe you can just go ahead and take a nice deep breath in and close your eyes unless you're driving a car. And just take a moment and think about a really beautiful, relaxing place in nature. Maybe it's a country meadow with beautiful wildflowers. Or maybe it's a beach with the waves lapping gently on the shore, the warm breezes caressing your skin. Or maybe it's a mountain, alpine mountain, or a mountain hike, maybe under trees and it's shady. Or maybe it's a tropical forest with a little lagoon on the edge. Maybe it's a beautiful room of your own design and choosing. Whatever it is, you're creating this place where you come to seek refuge and to create a shift in your life. And now stay here with me for a moment, and I'd like you to imagine seeing yourself in that shift place. And I'd like you to step outside of yourself and observe yourself in that shift place. Maybe imagine you're just relaxing there in a hammock or laying on the beach. And you are observing yourself as a loving companion. I want you to think about the friends or family that you love, that the way that you speak with them, the way that you want the best for them. I just want you to observe yourself and see yourself in the same way you would one of your children or your best friends or even an animal companion, just the tenderness and the love and the compassion that you have for that other person. And in fact, I'd like you in this shift place to tenderly just touch your own cheek. Just reach down and imagine you're just touching the cheeks just so tenderly, like, wow, I really appreciate you and love you. And as you're doing that, I want you to think of yourself as now the guardian and the advocate for yourself. So it's almost like you're both you, and I call it the coach, but you can call it the compassionate guide, whatever you feels right now, the nurturing parent. And touch your cheek in this shift place. And I'd like you to whisper to that you, I am going to take care of you. You are good enough. You are worthy. You have a right to take up space in this world. You are on your journey of being healthy and happy. And go ahead and say anything else to this you that you would like to let them know that they're okay just as they are. Just anything loving you want to say to yourself, go ahead and say it now. Good. Now, once you create this inner space of refuge, your shift place, you maybe can look at your abuser with some compassion to understand that your inner critic comes from fear and comes from kind of being grossly misinformed. Your inner critic took all of this information from the outside world and internalized it and is really acting out of protection, but just has it all wrong. You may not be able to forgive, but this allows you some space in this relationship with this abuser to kind of heal. Here's something else, and it's really, really radical, and you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but this is kind of crazy and it's kind of cool. I didn't make this up, but get this. And this is something that you can do with yourself, but I'd like you to try this on, is to sit down with a piece of paper and be your inner critic and have your inner critic apologize to you. But write it out, because this really gets you in your body, this in your body. So you could say things like, I apologize for calling you fat and undisciplined. Imagine how radical that is, to have this aspect of you apologize to you and to really go through that process. I am sorry I called you lazy. You work very hard at improving. I'm so sorry I didn't respect you. Do you see how powerful that can be? Try that on and see what you think. Okay, now number 5. Just become aware of that. Now that you're becoming aware of that critical loop, that was another step. I want you to start to self-advocate, to start to break it up. And just say, stop, I don't say that anymore. Like, for instance, if that critical part of you said, you blew it, you ate that junk food. This is my favorite, and maybe you've heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. Use the term, I am moving in the direction of, moving the direction is a wonderful term to use for your subconscious mind, because it's not an affirmation. It's not like saying, I'm eating healthy, but I'm moving in the direction of eating healthy. That opens up your subconscious mind, because if you're not quite there yet, your subconscious mind isn't going to buy it. But if you're saying I'm moving in the direction, it can buy that. So it will take that on. But sometimes I really love that idea of stop. I don't say that anymore. I say I am moving in the direction of making healthier choices. Or stop. I don't say that anymore. Stop is a great word. You don't have to be mean about it. You're just saying stop. We don't do that. Stop. Stop. I don't say that anymore. It's making a cognitive, what you're doing is really, it's like a little, you can take a breath when you're saying it too. It's like a little mini, it's like a karate chop. And making an incision in that old loop. So it's almost like you're cutting through that loop, and you're cutting right through it by saying stop. And time kind of stops. And your brain kind of stops when you say that. Stop. I don't say that anymore. I say, I'm moving in the direction of making healthier choices. Stop. I don't say that anymore. I'm moving in the direction of taking care of stress in ways other than food. So you're stopping and you're refocusing on where you are going. Okay, 6. Let's talk about our body language. So I want you to start advocating for your body as well, and pick one part this week. Pick a part right now. What's the part of your body that makes you feel the worst, cringe the most, that you would hide it? For me, it used to be my thighs. When we did our body love in our monthly mastery group, it was my neck crepe. And I can't believe how many other women in our group felt the same about their neck crepe. So last year we worked on it, and I worked on my bunions, which I have. So, there's always a part we can work on. We never run out of parts. And I always feel better about that part. It's such a loving thing to do. So just pick a body part and start to touch it every day lovingly. And I want you to rename that body part. My thighs were fat, chunky, disgusting. So I came up with some better words. Now, I didn't say my thighs were thin, because they weren't. And I didn't say my thighs were, gorgeous. But it has to be a word that gives your body part respect, but also something that you can really embrace wholeheartedly with all of yourself. So my body part, my crepey neck, I said it was witty, and I said it was wise, and I said it was sensuous. So here are some words that you might use, and you can please feel free. People are very creative when they start thinking about this. Long, strong, shapely, vibrant, lovely, pretty, sexy, presidential, royal, spiritual, goddess-like, whimsical, proud, witty, generous, statuesque, modern, toned, ripe, sensuous, handsome, bodacious, voluptuous, Olympic, wise. So see what you can come up with for your body parts and just have fun. And 7, start to observe all that you do that is powerful and put that in your evidence folder that you are capable and enough. For instance, I went for a walk today even when I didn't want to. We're very quick to point out, we were talking about this in my group, we're so quick to point out what we didn't do right. And when we do something right, we're very quick to move on from it and minimize it like it didn't matter, right? Our brain will just, oh yeah, I did that. Yeah, okay, well, let's forget about that. Let's move on. What's not working now, right? So we want to hold on to what we did. We want to hold on to what we're doing. We want to even hold on to those moments where we feel good. We want to put them in that evidence folder, that life is good, we're enough, that we do positive and healthy things. I can assure you right now, you're probably 60 to 80% of what you're doing is powerful and positive. You're just not seeing it. So wake up to all those powerful things you are doing on a daily basis and put them in that evidence folder. The more you call attention to them, the more you will see them, and the more you will start to see more that you do, I swear. So please do start doing that. I stopped after a couple of bites of dessert, and I noticed it was enough. Put that in your evidence folder. All right? So now I'm going to rustle my papers because I've got some notes here, and I'm going to just review really quickly what you want to do to start to break up this relationship and start to have a more powerful relationship. So number 1, just get conscious and observe how you abuse yourself and the restrictions, the negative loops. Then 2, you want to start to become aware of the relationship you do want to have. 3, and make the decision to stop this whole thing that you're fed up. And then 4, start to cultivate that shift place, that beautiful, relaxing place, that inner refuge you can go to. Take a breath and enter in there when you're feeling anxious, stressed, and need some self-love. And really tune into that inner guide, that inner coach that can touch your face and have compassion for you, that can be your own best advocate. Have that inner critic write an apology to you. What the hell? Why the hell not? Come on, life is short. Get that apology out of that inner critic before it's too late. 5, become aware and hear the critical loop of your negative self-speak and stop it. Stop. I don't say that anymore. And advocate. Advocate. Be your own best lawyer. Get in there or be your own best friend. Stop that bully on the playground in its tracks. We don't say that anymore. We say this. And then tune into that body part that you want to have some love for and give it a new name and observe all that you do that is powerful, healthy, all that you do in your day. There's so much that you do that is wonderful and powerful. Put it in that evidence folder, please, that you are enough. Well, I hope this episode served you. And thank you again for being here and coming here every week. Again, I am sitting in my gratitude here in the middle of the summer. And if you would like to join me this coming Saturday, if you're listening to this and you're available to come, or even if you don't want to come and you just want to get the recording and all the hypnosis and all the goodness from the retreat, please head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com/binge. That's BingeFREE to reserve your spot, or visit the show notes. The link will be there. And even if you're listening to this after that weekend, please visit the show notes. The link to enroll and get into the program online is also there. So have an amazing week, and remember that the key, and probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle, is inside you. So keep listening and find it and I will be here with you next week. Thanks for listening to the Thin Thinking Podcast. Did that episode go by way too fast for you? If so, and you want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release, head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to